today we're going to be taking a look at the new reworked Katarina. I'd just like to say that this rework is definitely for the better. She's been improved greatly, she's got a few damage buffs, and she's just a much more fluid experience overall. So in this video we're going to be covering item builds, runes, masteries, how she operates in teamfights differently from before, and just a few tips and tricks I might recommend. So without further delay, let's get right into her laning phase and talk a bit about her skills and how she performs in mid. Katarina's mid laning phase starts off extremely weak, until you hit around level 5. So, for the first couple levels of the game, you're going to be wanting to be focusing very strongly on farming. Katarina compensates for having such a weak start game by having a very good mid game. With the right communication from your teammates, you can very effectively gank bot or top lane. Be sure to ask your teammates if there are any wards, so that you can effectively avoid them and come in for a gank. Katarina depends very highly on the success of her start and mid game, so be sure to gank bot and top as much as possible, and keep your creep score as high as you possibly can. Be sure though, before you start roaming, to push your lane as much as possible with your Q and W, so that your tower doesn't get damaged. Overall, while Katarina still has a very weak start game, I believe that it is an improvement over last time. With the increase to her ability to be able to farm with her W and Q, I think she'll have a much easier time scaling into late game. Next we're going to go into detail about some of Katarina's spells, which have received some very significant changes. Katarina's Q still functions widely the same, however a new mechanic has been added to it. Whenever you cast it and it hits a target, it applies a debuff to them, similar to Akali's Mark of the Assassin. When you auto-attack or cast a spell on this target, it pops the mark, dealing magic damage. It's important to note that her Q no longer scales with attack damage, but it still scales with ability power, and the mark you apply also scales with ability power. I'll go into scaling and the exact ratios further later on. Katarina's W has received a complete overhaul, and now deals damage in an area around you. If you deal damage to a champion, you gain a large movement speed buff. This contributes even more to Katarina's high mobility, and also gives her a tool to pop that Q stack faster and more efficiently. Katarina's E, Shunpo, still works the same way. However, you'll notice that the damage has been reduced significantly. Not to fear though, this damage has been simply moved to the new mechanic on her Q, the stacks, and her new ability, W. So she hasn't lost any of her burst, she's in fact gained more damage overall. Katarina's ultimate remains largely the same. They've reduced the channel time, but also upped the ability power ratio. So we can still get pretty much the same amount of damage out of it late game, but we can deliver it in a shorter time. This will really help her in teamfights. Seeing as she's very vulnerable to being moved around or CC'd, this would interrupt her ultimate usually. But with the reduced channel time now, we can see her getting a lot more use out of her ultimate. Katarina's passive works almost exactly the same, but instead of 15 seconds off of her cooldowns when she gets a kill or assist, it's now 10 seconds. Also, when she kills an opponent or assists in killing an opponent, she no longer gains that 25 gold. Not a huge nerf here, so nothing to worry about. At level 1 you want to be grabbing a point in Q first. For level 2 you want to be taking a point in W. This will effectively allow you to poke a little bit and farm a lot by popping the marks with your W that you put on with your Q. For level 3 we're going to be taking our first point in Shunpo so that we can avoid ganks from enemy junglers. At level 4 we'll be grabbing another point in Bouncing Blade, and then at level 5 we're going to be taking another point in W. Most people do not do this, but it helps amazingly with farm as it doubles the base damage from your W. Next, just prioritize Q, E, and of course taking points in your ultimate when you can. Let's talk about some core items and the scaling on Katarina's abilities. I play Katarina as an ability power assassin. The only two abilities of hers that scale with attack damage are her W and her ultimate. Her W scales 0.66 with attack damage and quite a bit less with ability power, and her ultimate scales 3 for 1 with attack damage and 1.8 with ability power. We have 4 abilities scaling with ability power and only 2 with attack damage. It's quite obvious that we're going to be building purely AP with her. So, our item choices are going to reflect that. Katarina's new core item build should include Ralai's Crystal Scepter for that little bit of utility and slow and durability, and Will of the Ancients for that much needed sustain in the early game and mid to late game, Rabadon's Death Cap to really beef up her ability power ratios, and of course Sorcerer's Treads. The other two items are very situational. You may want to pick up a Zhonya's Hourglass if you're getting targeted. Depending on the enemy team comp, a Death Fire Grasp can often be an invaluable item to have. Also consider buying a Guardian Angel or possibly a Abyssal Scepter. Let's talk about some of Katarina's rune choices that she's going to be wanting to pick up now. For our masteries, we're going to be dipping all the way into the red tree, picking up all the offensive traits in the red tree, and then dipping into the blue tree to pick up magic resist, a little bit of armor, and that health. For our runes, we're going to be taking ability power blues and quintessences, and magic penetration reds, and following that up with some health per level yellows. Remember that Katarina is a burst assassin, and her main damage stems from her ultimate. So if you're versing a team with heavy CC, for example a team with Galio, or maybe Malphite or Rammus, wait for them to use all of their CC before engaging. This will ensure that you get the full channel out of your ultimate and can do all the damage you possibly want to. Another good tip is to always, during the mid and start of the game, carry a ward with you. If you're quick and you bind your ward to a hotkey, you can place it over a wall and Shunpo to that wall to make a quick makeshift flash over that wall. After using Bouncing Blade, Katarina's Q, wait a few moments so that it has time to travel to the target and hit them, so you apply that nice debuff to them. Otherwise, you'll be wasting that awesome damage and not getting the full potential out of Katarina's Q. When being chased by someone you don't desire to fight, find the nearest bush, keep them in line of sight, Shunpo to them and immediately W. They won't be able to click you since you were in the bush, and you can quickly run away with that move speed bonus from your W. The perfect juke. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. And for my subscribers, I know it's a bit of a new format, and make sure to drop me a comment. Tell me what you do and don't like so I can improve the videos even more. I hope you guys have as much fun playing Katarina as I did, and subscribe to stay tuned for future videos.